We're inviting you to enjoy Britain's most beautiful gardens as chosen by some of our most prominent personalities. Whether they're writers, politicians or broadcasters, these luminaries are also some of the nation's greatest garden lovers. But who is unlocking the key to their favourite garden today? We've come to glorious Gloucestershire, where the gardens at Kiftsgate Court have been nominated as the favourite garden of a well-known personality. We'll find out why as our famous figure takes us on a personal journey through these stunning grounds. Kiftsgate Court was originally built in 1887, but it was another 30 years until the gardens began to take shape. In 1918, the estate was bought by Heather Mure, who immediately set about creating a garden in which to express herself. The result is a feast of styles, and whether it's the ambitious planting, Italian landscaping, or contemporary water features, there's always something to delight and amaze at Kiftsgate. Since the 1930s, thousands of visitors have fallen for this garden's irresistible charms. And amongst them is a high-profile writer and broadcaster. Since the 1960s, she's provided feminism with one of its most significant voices. And with her groundbreaking 1970 book, The Female Eunuch, she caught the attention of a worldwide audience. She's enjoyed an acclaimed career in academia and has made regular appearances on programmes such as The Late Review and Question Time. But over the years, she's also indulged a passion for gardening that was inspired and encouraged by visits to Kiftsgate.
The thing about Kiftsgate that makes it a wonderful garden to be in is it's full of surprises. It's full of going around corners and da-da, something very different from where you were before. It's this hard and soft, smooth and rough, round and spear-shaped. It's this orchestration of textures and the subtlety of it. And also I think it's a quintessentially English garden, which means that it's exuberant, but shy at the same time. I think the English garden expresses the real voluptuousness of the English psyche, that this is a place where you can be totally sensualist, savage, inventive. Everything's frothing and foaming and spurting all over the place. I love all that. It's just perfect.
Today, Germaine will lead us on a tour of Kiftsgate Court and take us to her favourite spots. We'll learn how Helen Mure's legacy has been kept alive by her female descendants, and we'll hear about Kiftsgate's most recent developments. Germaine will also be invited to leave a lasting impression at the garden. As Germaine started to develop a real interest in gardening, she also began to visit gardens in Britain to learn more about what others were doing with their green spaces. And Kiftsgate was one of the first gardens that she visited.
I would have visited Kiftsgate very early in the 70s, when I was just beginning to come around to the idea that gardening might be entirely rewarding. I know it was quite cool. It was a dull day. And there was nobody here, really. So it's a long time ago, because this garden has been haunted by visitors ever since. I think I was just kind of stalking about, because I remember looking through a window and seeing a trug and a pair of boots and some catalogues and seed packets on a table and thinking, this is a gardener's garden. It's not a rich person's garden.
Germaine took her passion for gardening into the media world, and as well as writing for the Daily Telegraph's gardening section for 5 years, she also had a column in a satirical magazine.
I became extremely involved in gardening, but always very crabby about it. I wrote a column in Private Eye for a year under the pseudonym of Rose Blight. There were many, many things in gardens that I thought should just be discontinued forthwith. One of the things I hate now, for example, are hanging baskets. If I were Queen of the Universe, I would send the boys out to shoot them all down. I think they're revolting.
Kiftsgate Court is near Chipping Campden in the very heart of the Cotswolds. At the top of the estate is the late Victorian manor house. And beyond that, 17 acres of carefully planned gardens overlooking the Vale of Evesham to the Malvern Hills. Heather Mure was a gardening novice when she moved to Kiftsgate, but it wasn't long before she began to work on her dream garden. She was lucky enough to have the expert help of her lifelong friend Lawrence Johnston, who had recently designed the acclaimed gardens at Hidcote Manor nearby. Between them, they transformed the unkempt estate with paths, hedges, and a series of rich and colourful borders. In the 1930s, the steep bank was transformed into an Italian-style terraced garden, which proved the perfect place for Heather to demonstrate her increasing horticultural expertise.
When you actually come to what's happening inside a garden, very often it's the women who've decided, even when there's a head gardener who's quite headstrong, when it comes to finding just the right mix, even with plants that are difficult and demanding, it's usually a woman's hand in there somewhere.
In the early 1950s, Heather Mure took a step back from her beloved garden and allowed her daughter, Diane Binney, to take the reins. In the 1980s, Diane's daughter, Anne Chambers, became the third generation of the Mure women to own and run Kiftsgate. Like her mother and grandmother before her, Anne has both preserved and enhanced the garden with the help of her husband, Johnny.
From those early days, things have changed a lot, I'll bet.
We've all three actually loved finding new plants and interested in plants, so have all added over the generations interesting plants. My grandmother actually sent to Japan for tree peonies, so she was adventurous in her plant ordering. And I think my mum was too, and Johnny and I certainly, when we got here, decided that the winters were getting warmer, so we'd try and grow more tender things down the bottom because it is very sheltered. Next generation will look back and say, oh yes, that was that time, and now we'll be doing something else. So it always goes on.
So most of what you have in the garden are shrubs and perennials. What about propagation? Do you do that?
No, Johnny does that. And it was a great thing. He was an engineer, so I'm afraid I dragged him away from London on his engineering job. And I thought, it'd be hopeless for us both be falling over each other doing the same thing. So Johnny very much learnt how to propagate all the plants and do all the seeds and things like that, which I know nothing about, which actually we now sell quite a few of, and that's increased and helped to sort of pay for the garden over the years. Where we're standing now is our little addition. Every generation has added something to the garden. Then my mum put in the semicircular swimming pool at the bottom, and then we've done this, which was a tennis court, and always was. It was a grass tennis court originally in the 20s. And it was very nice, was having sort of looked after and nurtured the rest of the garden, it was nice to be able to create as well.
Germaine's passion and enthusiasm for gardening today is clearly evident in her conversations with Anne. But as a child growing up in Australia, things were very different.
When I was a kid, gardening was just misery, horror, tedium. The front garden had mostly a driveway with a bit of grass in the middle. My father had a sort of brainstorm and grew gladioli for a while. There were a number of things to love in that garden. One was a lemon tree that we peed on. It was supposed to be good for lemons, so we wanted to go to the loo. We got sent out to squat under the lemon tree, and they were grand lemons, I have to say. My mother occasionally grew nasturtiums, which I adore to this day. I think they're a wonderful plant. And otherwise, it was just clipping and pruning and edges and clipping. And it wasn't until I had a little house in Italy that was on top of a hill, and I bought a packet of seeds called mixed border brackets tall. I had no idea what was in this packet. And I just threw them down in a broadcast at the bottom of this wall. And they came up. I was astonished. I didn't know the names of anything that was coming up until the second year, because some of these were biennials, when I actually had bushes of carnations. I couldn't get over it.
Having experienced this seminal moment in Italy, Germaine's interest in gardening began and a lifelong passion started. She's been so delighted by Kiftsgate that she's taken part of this Cotswold idyll to her own garden in Italy.
I bought this really primitive little house, and I made a garden there which was like Kiftsgate, I realised. I mean, I had English roses growing everywhere. Anything that would support a rambling rose got one. And the first place I ever saw them used like that was here in Kiftsgate. When I first came to England as an Australian, I felt really foreign. And I was made to feel foreign. I spoke too loudly, my gestures were too big, I didn't seem to know my place in the pecking order. And so for the first year, I was conscious that I was really getting on people's nerves. Until I went to Italy. And I suddenly realised that I talked like them and I gestured like them and I belonged with them. I don't think I ever really needed to think back to Kiftsgate in a conscious way. I just assumed that the right way to do certain things was the way it's done here. But what's funny about how these things work is that I've gone and done a sunken garden in Essex without thinking about Kiftsgate at all. And why did I think of a sunken garden? No one else thinks of that in Essex. I think Kiftsgate is probably my touchstone of gardens. I hadn't actually realised how far it's sunk into my head until I was here today, and I realised why I do certain things and why I've got certain things in the garden, that I would have first seen them here.
Having visited on numerous occasions and drawn inspiration from Kiftsgate, today Germaine has been invited to put something back into the garden.
I'm always very nervous about giving people plants for their garden because I know how I feel when people arrive and thrust into my hand something I've been refraining from growing for the last 10 years. I feel very presumptuous bringing a coal to this particular Newcastle. So when it was suggested that I should make a present, I thought first of all of something very small and inconspicuous, but also something quite difficult to find, something a bit precious. And so I suggested Daphne Kalina. It's easy, it's not very demanding, it's quite fragile. It has the most wonderful scent. This is a gem of a plant, and it won't be a bully in the garden. It's quite a well-behaved little thing.
But Germaine's knowledge of gardening was not something she developed as a student. It came to her later on in life.
Why didn't I study science at university? Well, probably because I was put off it. Probably because it was badly taught. Probably because biology is a handmaiden of the other sciences and there's no living to be made. But who knows why I didn't do it? And now I find it completely spellbinding. So I put myself through the absolute misery, of learning my families and learning their characteristics and which one looks like what, which one smells like what. But that's part of my psychology. I have to be learning something. It explains every part of my life. It explains the men I've been with. It explains the men I haven't been with. It explains my whole career. It's that I'm forever snuffling around learning things.
We're in Gloucestershire, where acclaimed academic and broadcaster Germaine Greer has chosen Kiftsgate Court as her favourite garden.
It's exuberant, but shy at the same time. It's just perfect.
We've delved into the history of Kiftsgate, and we've learnt how Germaine will be contributing to the future of the garden.
I feel very presumptuous bringing a coal to this particular Newcastle.
Germaine's most recent project is her purchase of 125 acres of rainforest in Australia.
I buy a rainforest and understand it's my job to restore it. And that's now my project. I mean, that will keep me alive. I'm not very good at understanding how things have developed. My friends are better than I am because I think it's all a bit odd and unexpected and they think it's all absolutely inevitable. That I would end up trying to be the mother of 125 acres of 40-metre trees. But to me, it all seems amazingly unexpected and odd. And I feel as if I'm just being hailed around by the hair, by the forest. The forest decides. I don't decide at all. But I've always been a bit that way, I think.
Having experimented on her garden in Italy and splashed out on a rainforest in Australia, it's no surprise that Germaine has left her mark on her garden in the UK.
When I bought my house in England in 1984, I meant not to touch the garden because I knew nothing about it, about the soil conditions or the prevailing wind or anything. And of course I planted an orchard within about 6 months. The unhappiest orchard in England, it has to be said, but it's still there. And I planted a wood. And I've only realised this year that the wood is canopy. It's made it.
Kiftsgate is home to plants from all over the world, and Anne Chambers' husband, Johnny, has one celestial favourite.
Diorama pulcherrimum, angel's fishing rod. It comes from South Africa, and although it grows by the side of streams, it is obviously very happy in these well-drained conditions. Full sun, good drainage, but its toes, its roots are down in moist soil. Just to give it a little bit of support as it's growing up, we actually put in these hoops in the spring so that each of the flowering stalks can get some support from this metal hoop. And then in the winter we either leave it on or we can remove it.
Covering the entrance to the house at Kiftsgate is a 30-foot Asian climber.
This is Schizophragma integrifolium, and it's a native of China. It has these wonderful flowers at the end of July. It likes a slightly moist place to be planted, and it will grow away. As you can see, the full height of the house may be 30 feet. The Schizophragma is part of the hydrangea family. Most of the hydrangeas we prune, we take off the flower heads, usually in spring. But with the Schizophragma, we just leave it. It's too big for us to really try and take off all the flower heads. And perhaps because of that, we only get a really good flowering show like this every other year.
In addition to the Schizophragma, Kiftsgate is home to many other species of hydrangea.
When I was growing up, hydrangeas were one of the banes of my life because we grew these dreadful, tight, congested bushes that had round, uniform flowers that were pink, and you had to give them medicine and they turned blue, and everybody in the street was sort of trying to have the bluest hydrangeas. I just thought it was all a bore and a waste of time. And so for me, hydrangea equaled hideous. And then you come to this. If you have to have a shrubbery, this is it. And then you've got these beautiful lace caps, and then this grey-leafed one here that's coming out into the most exquisite pale grey lilac flower. I guess it's called cineraria, but I don't know. I just find these truly wonderful. Hydrangeas are just fantastic, and putting them all together like this, you realise how dreary ordinary gardening is, that people plant the same old things. I had no idea that there were hundreds of different hydrangeas, and that they would look like this, so loose and beautiful. They think they know what a hydrangea is. It's all of these, and they're just divine. And not one of them is the one that my mother grew, not one.
If you want to visit Kiftsgate Court Garden, it's situated in the heart of the Cotswolds, just 12 miles south of Stratford-upon-Avon, near to the village of Chipping Campden. You can catch a train to either Stratford or Moreton in the Marsh, and then a bus or taxi to the gardens. Otherwise, it's around a 30-minute drive from the M40 to the east or the M5 to the west. The garden is open on most days from spring through to autumn and costs £5.50 for adults and £1.50 for children. Whilst you're in the area, the garden at nearby Hidcote Manor is well worth a visit too. At Kiftsgate, Germaine is making her own contribution to the garden and planting her Daphne collina.
So you think this is a good spot for this?
Well, I'm hoping so. We'd get a good bit of sun crossing over here during the afternoon. Good soil, quite moist at the roots, and I hope it won't dry out too much.
I'm slightly concerned. This has been grafted.
Ah.
What do you think that stock is that it's grafted on?
I assume, do they normally Mesoreum, Daphne Mesoreum?
Well, I'd be a bit worried that you might end up with a Meserion instead of collina. See, you've got a bit of a bud happening there.
Yes. Well, it's not a bad thing anyhow.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Two for the price of one.
Exactly.
All right, shall we have a go?
Well, I'll tell you what, shall I get the hole ready first,
Yeah.
and then it can go straight in if it does collapse?
Well, we can't repeat this, so it's got to be right first time. Right, away you go. Cool.
Well, it's still in one piece.
I'm going to come back next year and check.
There we are. Let's just press it down a bit there. And do you think a bit of water now?
Well, I should think.
I'm afraid we do treat them mean here. Once we've watered them in, they're pretty much on their own. We tend not to go around watering everything we planted more than once.
Well, I can quite see why, actually. The other thing about them is they're not terribly long-lived, so you won't be stuck with it forever. If you should decide you really dislike it, because it reminds you of me, then it won't be around.
When it flowers for the first time, I'll think of you.
Oh, thank you.
Kiftsgate has inspired Germaine's garden both at home in the UK and in Italy, and despite coming here for over 30 years, it continues to excite and enchant her.
It's an important aspect for any garden that it doesn't give its secrets up immediately. You must be able to move from one space and one feeling to another. A good garden design relieves the eye, and Kiftsgate's just one unending sort of set of surprises. But they all make sense when you've actually looked at them. They all hang together and make sense. I think it's important to me, very. I feel strongly attached to it. How you feel in any garden has got a lot to do with what kind of day it is. I would come to a garden like this in the dead of winter. I would come to a garden like this in the rain to avoid other people, as a proper gardener, not just someone who's stepping out on a free afternoon. And this, I think, is an exuberant, happy garden. I just love it. It's gorgeous.